Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. This is going to be a chatty video. It's an addition to my Q&A answers video. And when I was preparing that video and posting it, I started to realize that I had received several questions regarding religion and theology and my background and education. And I thought I would come back on with an addendum to chat a little bit with you about my background, because I've wanted to kind of say some things out loud about that for a little while. So here goes. And if you're not interested in this part of my experience or my life experience, that's okay. You don't need to watch the whole video. But I am going to add to some of the questions that were posed to me. Very quickly, my religious background. I was raised Catholic. I left the Catholic Church at 13 after I made my confirmation, which is what happens in the Catholic Church, because my experience in Catholicism was very negative. I was raised by the church to believe you're going to hell no matter what you do, and you have to be perfect in order to escape it. And there were other things that I felt that's not correct. That's just not right. And I left. In my adulthood, I was searching out other churches because I knew I wanted to go back. The Catholic Church did a great job teaching me about God, and I still wanted that in my life. So, I tried a few places. I tried different churches and different locations, and it wasn't until I met my husband. We'll be married 24 years in May. So when we were dating, he invited me to his family church. And he, at the time, was a Lutheran, and I attended that church, and I immediately felt like, I want to continue going here. So that's what I did for a really long time. We didn't stay there. We left that church. That's a different story, and I'm going to keep that private. But we ended up finding a local church close to us, which was a non-denominational, evangelical, Christian, independent church. So we started attending, and I very quickly felt so comfortable and was approached by the pastor of that church to ask me if I would be interested in ministry leadership, because I was kind of a born leader, and I've always been that way. And so I started getting into ministry leadership, and eventually I became a deacon in the church. I was a Bible teacher, I was a conference speaker, a curriculum developer, and I absolutely loved it. We were there as members for about 10 years, and again, more information I'm not going to share, but we decided to leave at that point, and we started attending another local church with a slightly different denomination, and we attended for about 3 years. And I immediately became a volunteer pastor there because I was already in seminary. My seminary experience it's ironic because I attended a conservative cemetery. It's not a cemetery, it's a seminary. I had attended, ironically, a conservative seminary. And I did that because I was really interested in reading the Bible and learning more about the Bible. And that was a very Bible-heavy curriculum. So in my time at seminary, I did it part-time online for 8 years, and I received 2 master's degrees, a Master of Arts in Apologetics, which is a theological discipline, and a Master of Divinity. So we were at the second church for 3 years, and we left. Very quickly in both churches, we had some pretty significant theological differences. And in the first church, they were not female-friendly for female pastors and women in leadership. The second church, they were. But there were differences enough so that it was time to go. And when I left the second church, I actually started a home church, and I had about a dozen members that were attending. And it was great. I was pastoring, and I was preaching, and we developed a really tight group, and I was doing everything that a pastor would do. And it was probably about 10 months later that my daughter developed some health issues, and we needed to concentrate on that. That took the better part of a year, and that was 2019. She's good. She's totally fine now. But once I started thinking I'm going to get back into our home church, COVID hit. And so that was, 2 years ago now. Why am I talking about my theology and religion? Because with the multiple questions that I received, I realized that many of you who may be watching may not be religious, may have not ever attended church, don't believe in God. Some of you, I'm sure, do or have some church background. And I just wanted to talk about me in particular because in the 2 years I've been on BookTube, I've talked about my background before, but I may not come off as a typical religious person. And I know some of you have wondered that. It's like, she's a pastor? She's a religious person? There's a difference between religion and faith, and being called religious is not always a compliment. Because it can mean a person that just attends church and practices hypocrisy and goes on with their day. And that's not me. I believe I have a genuine faith, and that affects how I live my life. Why am I telling you this? Because I am not a conservative Christian. I am a liberal, progressive Christian, which means that I believe in inclusion. I believe that every member of the LGBTQ community is equal in worth and value and the desire and the allowance to love whoever they want. I believe that any two people who love each other can and should be able to get married with all the benefits that it entails. I believe that there should be no prejudice towards any person in that community, of any gender, of any sexuality, of any person who they love in their life. And that's not a church-friendly attitude to have. It's also not a church-friendly attitude to be a strong, educated Christian woman who is called to be a pastor, is called to be a preacher and a leader. The typical Protestant evangelical churches, and there are so many Protestant denominations, but the average Christian church typically does not have women pastors. There are many that do, and different denominations believe differently. There are so many conservative churches, though, and those are the ones I think that get the most public media attention, if you want to put it that way. So, it's been a battle, and another question I received is, why don't you work in that religious field, or why don't you still work in a church? I did, and one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to go off on my own was because I would get to define what that faith of mine looked like and how it appeared to other people and how I lived my life, looking at all other people with value and looking at all other people with worth and ability to offer something, whether it's in a church context or in relationships, in a work environment, in all environments. So I had a couple of strikes against me when you consider an evangelical church background. The thing is, though, if anything, that's pissed me off over the years, and it's made me more intent on proving something and proving that the things that many of the ideas and the attitudes that churches are teaching are directly contrary to what the Bible says and directly contrary to what God says about people, about humanity. And I can't bring myself to agree with church leadership that tells me that gay people should not be allowed to get married, that gay marriage is destroying the institution. No, there are plenty of other things that destroy the institution of marriage, and being gay and wanting to get married is not one of them. There are plenty of straight white people in churches who are abusing their spouses and abusing their families. And there's plenty of things that happen that nobody seems to see or notice that should be called out, and not two people of the same gender loving each other. So my ideas are contrary to so many religious people and organizations. When I come on, I don't believe in censoring any book I read. I don't believe in censoring any book for anyone. I have a potty mouth once in a while. That's come out many times. I'm just human, and I'm normal, and I'm regular, and sometimes I swear, and I try not to, but sometimes it comes out. I believe in science. I believe that there's room in faith for evolution, in evolutionary theory. I believe there's room in evolution for faith. I believe it can be combined, and there's answers on both sides of the conversation. I believe that there's plenty of room for doubt when it comes to God, and there's plenty of room for questions, and we don't have to listen to everything that the churches and people in churches are telling us and believe it blindly. It's not our job to sit back and be spoon-fed information. It's our job to ask questions and to say, well, wait a minute, I don't understand this, and wait a minute, I don't really think I believe this, and how can you help me with understanding? And there's room for that, and my faith in God allows for that. And the Bible that I've read and studied for many years shows me a different kind of God than who I'm learning about in many conservative churches. And so I don't know if anybody wanted to hear this. I just wanted to address more of the questions that I wanted to give a little more attention to in my Q&A. I'm not working in a religious context in my regular full-time job. I don't love that, but it is what it is, and my job pays my bills and helps support my family. Would I want to go back to working full-time in a church? If I was the pastor, yes, I would. But there's also a lot of uncertainty to that, because being a pastor of a church is not like you collect a paycheck and you get benefits taken out and somebody contributes to your 401k. That's not the life of a pastor at all. And believe me, there's no money in it. Well, that's not true unless you're some of those super duper arena pastors who are bringing in millions of people every year. And if you live in a $10 million house, I'm going off on a rant, and I could go on a very long rant. So this is all to say, I just wanted to share a little bit more about myself. And in case anybody else has been wondering those questions, like, well, she doesn't seem like a pastor or a minister. She doesn't seem like the ministers I've come into contact with or the people that I've seen in churches. That's because I'm not. I'm good with that. I love that I am who I am, and this might sound weird, but I would rather be wrong about loving people while I'm alive than if I excluded people from my life, if I excluded people from finding a person to love, from being who they are, no matter which gender and which sexuality. I am more willing to be wrong about what the churches are teaching a lot of people in conservative contexts than excluding humans. And that's not what the God I have faith in teaches me. God teaches us to love our neighbors. And I've talked to so many people in churches before, and I've preached sermons, and I've created material that we don't always understand each other, no matter what gender, sexuality, no matter what life somebody else is living that I may not understand. I can't possibly know everything that everybody has been through. But that's one of the most powerful reasons to just love. I really appreciate you watching. If you have any additional questions or any comments, let me know in the comment field below. And thanks so much for watching till the end. See you in the next video. Bye.